Okay, 2200 hours, Friday, and the International Full Stroke Timeline is live again. And as usual, one person. If you can hear me, please say something. I assume you can anyway. Right, well, hopefully there'll be more people turning up later. And in any case, this video will be live on YouTube in a few days, and eventually archived on the Internet's archive. Right, we've got a good session tonight. Hopefully, interesting. Tales of Trafficked Women. Should say though that I have no time really to look at this Streamlabs setup. I've been busy. I've got over my infection, but I've still got a touch of tickly cough, and I've been very, very tired lately. So I've been doing quite a bit of research in the library, but I've been very tired. Right, Tales of Trafficked Women. Right, let's see what we've got here. Oh yes, right. Well, sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is largely a myth, but only largely. In case you are unaware, trafficking is a word that's only really come into use over the past 15-20 years or so. We've seen a lot of actual trafficking. What's been going on with these NGOs bringing in people from Africa into Europe gratuitously. We've seen these caravans, extremely well financed caravans from South America, trying to storm the American-Mexico border. Trafficking and indeed modern day slavery is that, it's grossly exaggerated, but it does happen, and not just to women. It isn't just sex. It isn't just women. For example, I'll put this. I'll give you the link for this. Here's the link for you. This is the odious Connors family. There's actually been more than one trial here. Family which basically they preyed on men. They'd find men who were sleeping rough, homeless, and they offered them jobs and then set them to work for their gangs, building and construction, digging roads and such. I'll try not to yawn anymore. These really, really horrible people. One of them got 14-year sentence. So it does. Trafficking isn't a myth as such. And the fact that it's illegal, and people who pay money to traffickers or allow themselves to be exploited by traffickers do place themselves in jeopardy. But sex trafficking is the new narrative of the anti-prostitution lobby. Basically, there are four narratives. There's the traditional one, the fallen woman, which is the biblical harlot. This right down to fairly modern times in Victorian England, for example. prostitutes were referred to as unfortunates. Please, sir, my name is Jeanette, and I'm an unfortunate, that sort of thing. The opposition to, there's nobody here now, so hopefully somebody will come back. I'll carry on anyway. What happened was the fallen woman was narrative was continued until about second wave feminism, the misnamed women's liberation. Then you had these idiots, in particular the highly toxic Catherine Mackinnon and what's that? I forget. Dworkin, the repulsive Trevor Dworkin. They come up with the idea that that prostitution is rape. Well, they go for further that pornography is rape. Pornography is akin to rape. Feminists are not the only ones who do this. Like, they redefine words. So they tried to outlaw prostitution. Prostitution has been outlawed in America, except Nevada. I think 7 states in Nevada, seven counties in Nevada, but it's illegal in the rest of the United States. And they come up with the Nordic model, which outlaws the buying of sex, but not the selling of sex, which is ludicrous. Some main people who weren't happy with this were prostitutes, because some prostitutes can make a good living, but obviously it's a short period of time. I hate to say upmarket prostitutes. I don't believe any kind of whore is upmarket, but those who didn't hang around the street corners, those who were call girls rather than street whores, could make a good living out of it. And then really good upper class, you've got the courtesans. They were unhappy with this, so they came up with a counter narrative: sex work is work. Sex work is real work, or simply sex work is work. There's actually a worldwide movement of this to legalising prostitution. The idea being, of course, well, one of the ideas is that if it's legal, prostitutes don't have to go underground. So when they're victims of crime, of actual victims of crime, they can report it. I mean, whores are entitled to the protection of the law as much as anybody else. So they came up with this counter narrative: sex work is real work, and then the feminist sort of combination of the feminist lobby and the general so-called moral majority come up with another narrative, which is sex trafficking. Now, it's so absurd, really, that imagine this scenario: a man pulls up his car in the red light district, has a conversation through his window with a prostitute. She gets in the car, he drives around the corner, she performs a sex act on him, he pays her, they both go their separate ways. That guy's trafficking. She's been trafficked, she's been driven around the corner. This is stupid. But allegations of sex trafficking go a lot further than that. as usual, they try to mix to mix what is consenting adults with people who don't consent or can't consent, in particular the young. There is no such thing as child prostitution. There is child sexual abuse, child rape. And this has been used, but they the gross exaggerated statistics which they use. I've got a good case here. Where is it? There's a good website. Ah, yes, this is an excellent website. Well, so it's a WordPress blog, Bebop76 WordPress. I'll put that there. I was looking at it the other day. There's some excellent articles on it, and debunks the nonsense about kids of 12 and 13, etc. And I'll give you a couple of real examples. Much back in the news recently has been the case of Cyntoia Brown. Cyntoia Brown was convicted of murder back in. She murdered a guy back in 2004, and she was given a 51-year sentence, I think it was, life with a tariff of 51 years. And singer Rihanna and a non-celebrity whom I won't name rediscovered this case last year. This poor girl who murdered who killed her rapist in self-defense, yada yada yada. Why is she still in prison? Now this is let's get this right. This is no, that's the wrong one. Is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's yeah, this is it. This is the way this nonsense has been paraded in front of the American media. This is Democracy Now! No, this is Democracy Now! This is Amy Goodman, arch liar Amy Goodman of Democracy Now!, explaining the case of Cyntoia Brown, how she's a victim of sex trafficking, yada yada yada, and everything. I played the first minute or so of it. Everything this woman says is a lie. Absolutely everything. Oh, hello, two people. Hello. I hope you can hear me. Everything this woman. If you missed the beginning, but as usual, I'll upload. I'll make when I finish this live stream. I will set it to one person now. Okay, I'll set it to private. Edit out the stuff, the superfluous stuff at the beginning. Then I'll put it back on YouTube, and next month it will be on the Internet Archive. So, so if you missed the beginning, you won't have to miss the beginning. Everything this woman says is a lie. Okay, listen to this. I'll just play the first minute or so. As we turn to the story of Cyntoia Brown, who on Monday was granted full clemency by Republican Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam after serving 15 years in prison. The decision follows months of intense public pressure and outrage over her case. Brown was sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of first-degree murder for shooting her rapist as a teenager. She had been sexually trafficked, repeatedly abused, and drugged. The shooting happened when Brown was just 16 years old, but she was tried as an adult. This is Cyntoia Brown speaking at her clemency hearing in May. Everything she said there was a lie. Cyntoia Brown is some toxic piece of street trash. What happened? Now, what happened was. Where's it? Where's the one where she's you hear her speaking? I think this is the one. This is the one.
This is Democracy
No,
Now!
that's
I'm Amy Goodman.
Shut up, Amy. Shut up. Where are we? This is the one. This will show you how these. I think this is quite funny, actually.
I know you did. I know you did.
I thought he was reaching for guns. I'm like, oh, shit. And so that's what he's done. It's gonna murder me or rape me or something.
No. Then what did you do?
I shot him. And it's like all these thoughts all of a sudden rushed in my head. What am I doing? What am I doing? What is happening?
All right. We are here this afternoon, I believe, in the matter of Cyntoia Brown. I have your date of birth listed as January the 29th, 1988. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
That makes you, what, 15?
16.
16. Yeah. Do you understand why you're here?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
You understand why you're here? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. They after she was arrested, they they took her to court in pigtails, and she looked about 12. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So what's the reality of Cyntoia Brown? Well, first of all, she wasn't trafficked, so this is complete nonsense. Cyntoia Brown, this was in Tennessee. She murdered a man named Johnny Allen. Now, the age of consent in Tennessee is 18, which is massive. She was 16. In the UK, it would have been perfectly legal for a man of Johnny Allen. He was, I think, 44 at the time, 43 at the time. It would have been perfectly legal for a man of his age, or indeed for a man of my age now, to have sex with a 16-year-old in the UK. Perfectly legal. Probably to be frowned upon by the younger generation. But technically, that would have been statutory rape because she was 16. However, when she went to court, when she was arrested, she told the police, this was August 24, 2004, she told the police she was 19. She gave her name as Cyntoia Denise, I think Matthews. I mean, where are we? Cyntoia Denise Mitchell. Basically, she gave her date of birth as January 29th, 1985, which would have made her 19, and presumably she looked 19. The police took her at her word, but when they did some research on her, found out she wasn't. She was only 16. She was transferred to juvenile court, but she ended up being tried as an adult. What actually happened was, the fact that we know is that Johnny Allen picked her up, apparently for sex. She was prostituting herself. She admits that, although we can't. You know, it's debatable how much of anything she says we can believe. She was prostituting herself. Johnny Allen picked her up, took her back to his place. It's unclear if they actually did have sex, but he was in bed. He went to bed, and she shot him through the head and stole his money and guns and his truck. When the crime scene boys arrived, they found Allen. He'd been shot through the back of the head. He was lying on his side, and his hands were sort of interlocked like that. So he was clearly asleep at the time he was murdered. And she came up with some cock and bull story about she thought he was going to kill her. She shot him with the gun in her purse, like, you know, trafficked women, trafficked girls carry guns, you know. She was living with basically, Cyntoia Brown, I don't sound too judgmental, but she was trash. She had a white trash mother, and who was put up for adoption, fostering. She went to a black woman, foster mother, adoptive mother, who could only be described as exemplary. But she wanted to play the wild child. She ran away from home, and she shacked up with a gangster, Gangsta, a bloke she called Cutthroat or Cut. His real name was Gary McLaughlin, which doesn't sound quite so intimidating, does it? And McLaughlin is said to be a pimp. You know, he was obviously not a good person. Well, not the sort of person you would invite into your home. He was actually murdered the following year, shot dead in a gangland shooting. Guy was arrested. I'm not sure what was the result of that. But if you read the, I'll give you the link for this. This is the Tennessee Court of Appeals. This is Tennessee Court of Appeals. It's really, it's unclear to me if they didn't seem to want anything to do. McLaughlin and another bloke were questioned in connection with the murder. They didn't want anything to do with it, and she claimed afterwards that she used to be raped, but he would force himself on her, but she stayed with him. So I mean, it's just ludicrous. I don't believe anything this bitch says, basically. But Amy Goodman and others have got hold of the story, 14 years down the line, and thinking people have forgotten. Well, I saw a documentary about her a while back, and I certainly haven't forgotten. And these airheads like Rihanna, they pump out a tweet or two, and the gullible goyim and the gullible non-goyim, in the case of Amy Goodman, just follow. And they don't bother fact checking, or they're not interested in facts. But the amount of ignorance on this particular case is incredible. I was watching a video on YouTube, a black TV station, or black talking heads, and this black woman said, she stole his money when she left her. Oh, she probably needed it to buy food, which begs the question: what would she have done when she ran out of money? Murdered someone else? There's a case here. This isn't an allegation of trafficking as such. This is. I mean, Goodman is just lying. It's just a lying cunt, basically. This is another one. This has been in the news fairly recently. Alicia Walker. She's said to have been defending herself against an aggressive John. In fact, she weighed quite a bit more than this guy. She and another woman, or two women, they went to this guy's home. She'd had some business with him before. She ended up stabbing him to death quite violently. And the Gullibles have got a hold of this, and they started a petition for her. Some of these cases are absolutely ridiculous. They're so ridiculous, in fact, that you have to wonder at the sanity of the people who fall for them. Another case was Karla Jacinto. This is ludicrous. This is a young Mexican woman. She got pregnant at a very young age. She was said to have been working in a brothel in Mexico. And they actually, this wasn't feminists who did this. It was, I think, the moral majority of Christian right. They brought her in front of Congress, and she claimed to have been raped. Now get this, I'm not joking. This 43,200 times over a 4-year period, and there was no cross-examination of this woman. They just accepted her rubbish. It was a tabloid, I think it was a Daily Mail. The comments column was incredibly skeptical. Some really quite frivolous comments there. She carried it all the time. Absolutely ridiculous. She was a prostitute. She was working as a prostitute. And these women are notorious liars anyway. Right, now we come to the the queen of trafficking liars, Somaly Mam. Now this is, if you haven't heard of Somaly Mam, she's a Cambodian woman who was Captain Saverho rescued her. She met a French aid worker. Well, it was a French worker in Cambodia, Pierre Legros, in 1991. He ended up marrying her. Well, a prostitute is not a wife, sorry. And she was working as a prostitute. She claimed to be forced to work as a prostitute, trafficked, etc. She ended up setting the Somaly Mam Foundation. In 2007, she published her book, Les Silences de l'Innocence. It was republished in English. The Road of Lost Innocence, the true story of a Cambodian heroine. Story, yes. True, no. Now, I'm not saying she did no good work at all, but like a lot of charity workers, charity begins at home. She told a story about being sold into slavery, sex slavery by her own grandfather. She set up a house with girls who were allegedly sex trafficked. Some of them may have been, young girls may be rescued from the forced prostitution, i.e. child abuse, rape. But her star catch was a young girl named Long Pro, or Long Pros. Long Pros, she lost an eye. And the story that was fed to the world by Somaly Mam, who I don't know if Long Pros herself started this, but I probably not. But the story was that Long Pros had been kidnapped and forced to work in a brothel, and the brothel owner, a madam, a female pimp, had stabbed her in the eye and stabbed her in the eye and then thrown her out. I mean, a horrible story. In fact, this was not a horrible story at all. Very opposite, the truth of it. The documentary team from 101 East, a documentary series based in the Far East. They investigated the story. They found what the truth about it was that when she was a young girl, Long Pros developed a tumor on one side of her face. It grew really horrible. It probably in the end of covered her whole head and she'd have died. A charity, a non-governmental organisation, not sure which one it was. She was living with her parents in they were rural Cambodians, very poor, and they took her to I think it was Phnom Penh. They took her to in the city anyway, put her up in a hotel, and one of the country's leading surgeons, specialists, operated on her. Got rid of the tumour, was unfortunately was unable to save the eye. So this story about her being the brothel keeper, and that was she'd never been in a brothel. She certainly hadn't been mutilated like that. Now, as I've said, you can't get angry with long prose. I mean, this is a country in which a girl's good looks. She was obviously a good-looking girl, which a girl's looks are, without them, she hasn't got much of a future. But really was a horrible, a horrible story, horrible but untrue story, and thankfully it was exposed. This is par for the course for these stories of sex trafficking, grossly exaggerated. Well, in the case of Somaly Mam, totally fictitious. And almost all these stories, especially these women who claim asylum, every one of them has been raped or sexually abused. Every one. It's all lies. All lies. Well, no doubt one or two of them have been victimised here and there. So this is the trafficking narrative. Let's go back to Cyntoia Brown. A very similar story to Cyntoia Brown was that of Emma Humphreys. Trafficking wasn't used. The phrase trafficking, the word trafficking wasn't used then, because she likewise she was 17 when she committed a murder. She murdered a guy who was said to be a pimp, but she's actually living with this guy. And I read the book on the case, the book on her by Julie Bindel and her lesbian lover Harriet Wistrick, and it's based on Humphrey's own writings. And it's clear that, I mean, they're absolutely delusional, these women who Bindel in particular, Bindel and Wistrick, how they could, I mean, this, the idea that women are press ganged into prostitution. It's clear from her writings, that her own writings, that Humphreys was quite happy as a prostitute. She also met Captain Saberho, and he told her that she should leave her so-called pimp, I'll post this link. She should have left the guy she murdered, Trevor Armitage, gone and signed on as unemployed, whatever, and got her own flat and got a job. She was averse to that. Where's Bindel? There's Bindel at the bottom of the page, I think. Oh, she's incredible. This women against prostitution of women. Emma Humphreys was Emma Humphreys was 17 years old when jailed for killing a man in self-defense against rape. No. Trevor Humphreys was lying on his back, drunk, and he had his shirt pulled over his eyes. Emma's campaign was successful. In 1995, her conviction was quashed. Emma worked as a prostitute from the age of 11. No. She ran away from her home. She relocated to Canada with her mother and her stepfather. And alcohol was an issue there, but she wasn't abused. Her conviction was quashed. Blah blah blah. You're planning to write a book on experiences in order to dispel the myth about child prostitution. Well, no, it's complete nonsense. I wrote an article about her, which the canonisation of Emma Humphreys, based on the original documentation, and it's clear she was she was a really toxic bitch, a serial false rape accuser. But she would have been called in those days. It would be if she'd been recently, it would have been classed as sex trafficking. Another case, very different from Humphreys, was Linda Lovelace. For younger people, if you haven't heard of Linda Lovelace, she was the star of a film called Deep Throat. You'll have heard the phrase deep throat, which is a cultural reference. It was a sort of low budget sex comedy, which she had a strange peculiarity, put that way. And it was made on a small budget. It brought in millions. It brought her instant notoriety. She married a guy named Chuck Trainer, who was a bit of a creep. And her fame was short-lived. And when she passed her sell-by date or use-by date, she turned against the pornography industry with a vengeance. And she started campaigning with Christian anti-porn campaigners. And she blamed everything on Trainer. She married him, and he raped her repeatedly and allowed her to be raped by other men. Blah blah blah. Before she met Trainer, Linda Lovelace made a film, a really depraved film, in which she had sex with dogs, or their dog, you know. And you'll find. I won't give the title, but you run her name and. You run a name and the word dog through your search engine, you'll find it. You might even find the actual film. I did find it on a porn site. I didn't watch it because, you know, I mean, I'm not averse to looking at pictures of tastefully attired women, or even tastefully half attired women. But I draw the line at women having sex with dogs. You know, I mean, I've met some really some rough bitches in my time, but I don't think I've ever met a woman who would have sex with a dog, even at the point of a gun. That's how depraved this bitch was. But again, this is the feminist rape narrative, the feminist narrative. All women never have agency unless they do good things. You know, if a woman, if she starts a business, or she gets a humanitarian award, or she invents something, or she's an acclaimed author or songwriter, you know, that she takes credit for that. But if a woman kills a man, what did he do that made her do it? You know, if she does something depraved, or even just steals money, then there has to be this goes beyond mere mitigation. You know, anytime somebody's convicted of a crime, whether or not a person pleads, if a person pleads not guilty or pleads guilty, there's always mitigation. But with women, with feminists, it's always it was a man's fault, it was her father's fault for abusing her, or uncle's fault for sexually abusing her, or somebody's fault. It's all some man's fault or group of men or whatever. Never her fault. Never, ever, ever. This is the sex trafficking narrative. Virginia Roberts, I'll probably discuss her when I do a video on the Grand Conspiracy. But Virginia Roberts, this is a fairly recent case. She was an underage. I think she was 15 when she met Jeffrey Epstein, a notorious a billionaire who had a preference for underage girls. Now, if he'd I mean, why under it? Well, if she'd have been like 3 years older, he could have had to dress up like a schoolgirl and had sex with her legally. But Epstein had he's said to have had a lot of girls working for him, giving him foot massages, foot massage indeed. And Virginia Roberts was probably maybe a star catch. She travelled the world with him. She met Prince Andrew, and there's a photograph of her with Prince Andrew when she was 17. He was about 40. He's got his arm around her, and this is, of course, as proof of what? She claimed to have had sex with Prince Andrew at the instigation of Jeffrey Epstein. Well, in England, a man of 40 odd who has sex with a 17-year-old, it's something you might boast about. It's perfectly illegal. But she was in Thailand, I think, and she met an Australian national and married him. And then the money ran out, so she brought an action against Epstein, and she roped in his lawyer Alan Dershowitz as well, for good measure. I mentioned Carol Knuth. I haven't added her to the International Foresight timeline, but you'll find her video on both on YouTube and on the Internet Archive. Her name is spelled K. Surname spelled capital K Nuth. It's pronounced Knuth, right? Not Knuth, Knuth. She sounds very rational, but as you listen to her, you realise that no, she's claimed to have been sexually abused by her own father, and to have been put in a foster home and doing abuse there. And then when she was a big girl, she went back to her state, and the court records have been destroyed. But if you have to listen to her, she sounds really rational and level-headed. But when you have to think, can anyone have been abused so much at so many different stages by so many different people independently? And there are a lot of women like that who, some of them are just crooks and attention seekers. But some of them make money out of it. A good example is Natasha Herzig. Is another fantasist. Find her. There was a documentary. Yeah, it's a documentary called Spider's Web. Spider spelled capital SPY. She was. She claimed to have been. She's an American woman. She claimed to have been kidnapped, thrown into a room, raped repeatedly until she was broken. There's a documentary about her called it's called Spider's Web. It was the date of it? It was 20. Well, it's a series, 2014. Probably 2015 it was released. And yeah, 31st of March 2015. And she says that the low point of her life, an all-time low, was when she began modelling, became a porn star. Well, working in the porn industry as Tiffany's Price. She became a minor star. That was the thing she regretted most. Not being kidnapped, stripped, held in a bare room, raped repeatedly. Her low point was starring a porn film. In fact, her pimp Spider was arrested for controlling prostitutes, and he got quite a light sentence. I think it was about a 5-year sentence. Then he got more than that for a single rape. She claimed he raped other girls as well. Because what happens with a lot of these women, because in America prostitution is illegal, when they're caught out, they claim to have been trafficked. They claim to have been forced into it. A lot of these asylum cases, I'm not talking about women who claim asylum, claim to have been raped as part of the process, but women are lured to, not so much black women because they're not as well, black women and Oriental women, no contest. But Oriental women can be quite attractive. Sometimes Eastern European women, they come to the UK or Ireland or other European countries or America, and they they become prostitutes. That's almost all of them claim to have been duped into believing they're going to be working as waitresses or whatever. But there's no doubt that the vast majority of them understand that they do it knowingly. They work in massage parlors, which is sort of prostitution. I mean, there are massage parlors where it's massage and not only massage. The other in and around the sex industry, and when they're busted, what do they say? Well, if they say yes, I came here to work as a prostitute, they'll be on the first plane back. But if they claim to have been their passports were retained and they were held as slaves, yada yada yada, they can claim asylum. So it's again, this is women not taking responsibility for their own actions. I'm not saying absolutely all of them. There have been some quite horrible cases. There was a quite horrible case in New York a while back, which women were being properly trafficked from Mexico and held as really forced into prostitution. Again, there's no such thing as forced prostitution. There's prostitution and there's rape. But there was a big gang of them. But the vast majority of these cases, they're not trafficked at all. The whole thing, trafficking, it isn't an entirely myth, but it's largely a myth. So, anytime you hear a sob story, look for the corroboration or lack thereof. And whatever you do, don't, if you listen to Amy Goodman or any of these stories they run. I mean, Amy Goodman wasn't the only person who ran this Cyntoia Brown nonsense. The Young Turks did the same thing. And these people just lying, this is lying. Anytime you read about one of these cases, if there's a criminal case, particularly if there's a felony, especially if it's involving somebody being killed, look for the legal judgments. If there's an appellate judgment, it's very good because it gives a chronology and findings of fact. But finding that, look at the actual court proceedings. A lot of the American cases are televised, court TV and everything. We do it very differently in the UK, but in American cases, if you read the findings of fact of the appellate courts, and if you look at what happened in the courtroom, and then compare it with what somebody says happened, somebody says years later, or even decades later, what happened, you'll be surprised how often it's different. I'll give you one more example. Let's get the name. That's the one. Terry Williams. Yes, Terry Williams. This is a teenager who a teenage boy. He murdered 2 homosexuals, and he's years later he was presented to the world as a victim. Findings of fact, there's file 1152 on the same page I just gave you. The findings of fact are very different. He was a big thuggish kid who was flogging his mutton. He murdered 1 homosexual, and he roped in another, one of his friend of his to help him murder another one. He trashed his kid's life as well as his own. Real low life, but he's been portrayed as a victim of, if not of trafficking, of child sexual abuse. It's just unbelievable the stuff they come out with. So anyway, if and when you hear any sex trafficking cases, always use a little bit of critical faculty, because the vast majority of them are just total bunk. Okay, well, thank you for coming, whoever you are, one person. I'll put this on. I'll make this live in a few days, and it will be there for future reference. I'll be updating the time. I've got some a few more cases to add to the Full Soap timeline. Probably won't do that until probably Thursday of next week. But we're pressing on. The next, probably the next next timeline will be in 2 weeks' time. Not quite sure what I'll do there. I might cover rape myths or recantations. Probably 3Ds is probably the best one. The 3Ds of false rape allegations. Okay. Thank you for coming, and thank you for those of you who will watch this video eventually. I'm going to have another cup of tea and do a bit of work, maybe watch a documentary.